Now, it's been one of the most explosive weeks at the Zondo Commission of Inquiry into claims of state capture. 3 witnesses have implicated high-ranking officials, saying they visited the Gupta family in Saxonwold and left with bags of cash. Former Minister Malusi Gigaba and the former CEO of Transnet and Eskom have been named amongst others. Before we speak to Karyn Maughn, let's recap some of the evidence. Now, witness 1, a security officer at Transnet, testified that Brian Molefe, the former Eskom CEO, met with Ajay Gupta at the family home in Saxonwold, and he would sometimes carry a backpack with him. He says on one occasion he saw notes in bundles in Molefe's bag. He also said he was asked by Molefe or Molefe's PA to deposit sums of money into various bank accounts monthly.
I then called his PA, and showed her the cash in the bag and just said, look, you should make sure that nobody comes in here, because should this money get lost, it would be me and you who will have to be answerable. So just make sure. I called the PA came, and then I showed her the money.
Witness 3 had been a security official at Transnet but was later seconded to the Department of Public Enterprises. He said that when Malusi Gigaba was Minister of Public Enterprises, he made unscheduled visits to the Gupta family. He says that he saw money in the minister's official vehicle, which was used to pay for various things.
At some point, the minister would carry a large sum of cash with him. And I wish to highlight the following instances in this regard. One day I was present with the minister, and when he opened the boot of the car, of the official vehicle, to take out money to buy lunch for us, including the backup guys and the 2 SAPS officials with him.
Right.
Inside the boot, there was a bag which she opened, and there was some stack of bundles of money inside.
Right.
With 200 notes.
Are you able to say where that money came from?
I couldn't tell that time, but as we make some visits, then I could connect the dots to say the money came from the Saxonwold residents.
How can you say that?
Because at some point, as we went to the premises, he would go to the Guptas and we would go to something he would use to pay cash on his tailored suits.
All right, to discuss, we're joined by senior legal journalist Karyn Maughn. Karyn, what incredible testimony this week. So corruption is very hard to prove. It's often not written down what the deal is. But there are some specifics here, even the safe where the money was put. Is this something that law enforcement officials can really work with?
I think it's an important question, because typically the pathology of sophisticated corruption networks is to utilize cash, because obviously when payments are not made directly into accounts, people can deny that in fact they received payments for allegedly corrupt purposes. But we have heard evidence from these witnesses, specifically in regard to Ajay Singh, for example, that money was put into Knox safes. Those kind of records can be obtained and looked at. Evidence around the suits that Malusi Gigaba is alleged to have purchased, whether or not those payments were made in cash, are potentially accessible to investigators. Also, with regard to the evidence around Brian Molefe's PA, a second person who potentially could be a valuable witness here. And then, it's not about these individual allegations on their own. It's about what former prosecutor Karyn Maughn always describes as the matrix of evidence, which he utilized in, for instance, the corruption trial of Jackie Selebi, to show that there was, certain conduct in relation to these specific officials, which would have constituted, for example, a quid pro quo on their part. And in the case of these various officials, there is ample evidence to suggest that Brian Molefe, Ajay Singh, and Malusi Gigaba have involved themselves, as we've seen evidenced from the Gupta leaks, in deals that very much had massive significant benefits for the Gupta family. The suggestion that they were doing that, of having received cash payments, would be a compelling part of a case that the NPA may choose to present if and when they are prosecuted.
Yeah, and the terms have changed so that they can use all this evidence coming out at the Zondo Commission.
This is pivotal, Francis, and I'm so glad you raised it. I mean, a few weeks ago, we saw this amendment to the regulations for the Zondo inquiry, which essentially allows, the investigators to assist and interact directly with the NPA. And what that means is not only would the NPA officials be able to directly interact with investigators about what they've found, much of which may not even make itself way into the public domain, but they would be able to plug holes in, for instance, the case of the NPA in terms of proving this in a court of law. And I think what's so fascinating is that we have seen a pathology from the Zondo inquiry, specifically in relation to the Gupta leaks, making sure that they would be admissible as potential evidence. And in the way that, Paul Pretorius is questioning these witnesses, he's very careful to construct a potential matrix of evidence that the NPA can build on if and when they choose to prosecute these cases.
Okay, let's look at what came out, give an overall view. So starting with Malusi Gigaba, who's a former minister and still a very high official in the ANC and known for being a snappy dresser. So if this testimony is corroborated, if it's taken as fact by the Zondo Commission, it would mean that the Guptas were paying for his suits.
Well, this is pivotal because Malusi Gigaba between 2010 and 2014 was the Minister of Public Enterprises. He's occupied different positions, Minister of Home Affairs, subsequently Minister of Finance. But it was in his position as Public Enterprises Minister, for example, that a number of sort of quite provocative Gupta leak documents have emerged about him, about potentially questionable appointments to the SAA board, for example. We know that he was appointed after Barbara Hogan, who, alleged that, or there was evidence that potentially she was removed because she was a barrier to potential Gupta deals that the Gupta family wished to do. But in that role at Public Enterprises, he was responsible for Eskom and he was responsible for Transnet. Now, both of those parastatals, according to the Gupta leaks and according to legal action actually subsequently instituted by the Asset Forfeiture Unit and the NPA, and indeed, the Transnet Pension Fund, there were a lot of things that happened there, and specifically in Transnet's purchase, very controversial purchase of 1,064 locomotives, some of which were involved the South China Rail deal, of which you are very well aware because you questioned Brian Molefe about this, much to your detriment at the time in 2014. That deal was a pivotal linchpin by which the Gupta leaks allege that the Gupta associates received significant kickbacks. We also know that Regiment's Capital was appointed as a consultancy firm for Transnet at this time. We know from the Regiment's Asset Forfeiture Unit application filed by Hermione Cornier that the state contends that Brian Molefe and Anaj Singh, for example, were pivotal players in those kind of deals. And of course, in the midst of this, we have the Minister of Public Enterprises, who is, of course, Malusi Gigaba. Yeah. So, there's a very compelling network here that the state will have to interrogate.
And thanks for bringing that up, because I think the evidence around that China rail deal is stacking up. So one of the witnesses went with Anaj Singh to a lodge and saw men, he said, of Chinese descent and bags. There's still dots to be connected there. He didn't see cash, but this looks suspicious, surely in light of the claims around Transnet's deal with a Chinese bidder getting a very big share there.
Well, remember some of the pivotal evidence that's emerged, for example, in the Regiment's asset forfeiture application, was that, in fact, Brian Molefe and Anaj Singh allegedly, fraudulently, massively inflated that locomotive deal from, I think, in the region of, 38 billion rand to about 54. I mean, those are incredible figures. The Gupta leaks, for example, have alleged that as a consequence of that, certain Gupta associates may have allegedly received massive and significant kickbacks. And I remember specifically in relation to that interview where you actually at the time in 2014 questioned Brian Molefe about the fact that deals were being done with China South Rail in circumstances where there were massive question marks about them, and the public protector at the time was investigating them, why that happened. And his extraordinary response to you and the aggression which he displayed to you at the time now would seem, in the light of this evidence, in the light of Anaj Singh being the CFO of Transnet at the time when those questions were being raised, would certainly give anyone with any knowledge of the situation here ample cause to start questioning what exactly happened there.
Yeah, well, we all continue to watch with interest. Thank you very much. Wrapping up a very interesting week, senior legal journalist Karyn Maughn. We take